the community part of it is a big element of what makes it all tick, and having that authentic interest is a big part of that. It's like I am not a D&D player. That is Rachel's thing. But when a new D&D source book comes out, I read it. Why? Because I want to be able to talk to someone if they're interested about the new hot thing. Like I don't need any pushing to go be excited about Warhammer or Magic or Pokemon or Lorcana. Yeah. But for things that are outside of my purview, so I am not much of a player of video games, even though we carry a lot of them, because it's something where, given all the other things that I'm interested in, video games are one that's hard to prioritize. But it's something where, we hire people who are super excited about video games. We've got a couple of guys who can go, oh, cool, you really like Dishonored? Let me tell you about the other games that, if you like Dishonored, are similar to Dishonored. It's like the same sort of concept in bookstores where you're hand selling, right? I'm telling you something because I think it's cool and interesting, and that's my authentic opinion, not because the manufacturer told me that I need to sell X number of copies. It's neat. I will tell you what I thought about this experience, good and bad, with the idea that being that, eventually, that you'll trust my recommendation when I say, hey, you like the last thing that I recommended for you. Here's something that's to your taste profile is, kind of what I would recommend. So it's typically why when we have video game clients come in, they'll go, well, I'm looking for video games. All right, man, what's the last thing you played that you liked? Give me some insight into, oh, you played Minecraft? All right, cool. Did you like the building elements? Was it the survival mechanics? Let's dig a little into, and it's really helped people sort of, it's been neat to sort of see that people have gone, oh, I never really thought about, what it is I like about these things. Just that I enjoyed the last thing I played, but what was it about it that worked? Because, it's something where if you have that in-depth knowledge of, games and sort of how they're structured, you can say, okay, well, I know if you liked this element for this reason, here's something else that may look different, but its core elements are similar. It may look like it's not the same type of game, but if you play it, you'll go, oh, I really like this. So, for example, there's a video game that came out that I really liked, Mortals of Averam, and it's a single player shooter style experience. And part of what I liked about it, and part of what it got middling reviews for, was that it was a very short play experience where it's like a 10 to a 12-hour game, maybe 20 hours if you kind of do everything in it. But it's a linear storytelling experience about sort of a high fantasy world where you shoot magic as if it was a weapon. It's very fun, but it's short and it's to the point, has a cool sort of story wrapped up in it, but it's definitely something where, it's not an Elden Ring where you're going to spend hundreds of hours and grinding into it. But for someone who's like me, where, I'm in my late 30s, and, it's something where I'm, I only have about 15 to 20 hours on a weekend if I really sit down and just play it straight. So I need something that I can play in a couple of sittings, or I can play in sort of one sitting if I have a weekend for it, and just be done it and not feel I'm, oh man, I got halfway through and didn't finish. It's something where, that's the kind of thing where, to me, the value is not in that it was hundreds of hours of gameplay. I don't need that. I've got stuff to do. The value to me is that I can play it in a discrete session and just feel like I got something accomplished and got a full experience. And whether it was the fact that it was an $80 game for 12 hours of playtime versus an $80 game for hundreds of hours of playtime, it's irrelevant to me because I'm not going to play the hundreds of hours for it. But that's something where, that kind of a recommendation, if someone comes in and says, well, I bought Assassin's Creed, Odyssey, and I got into all these things and Far Cry, and I just, I never finished any of them. Hey man, if you like this sort of stuff, and what you're telling me is that you like playing games, but you do not have, the ability to play 40 plus hours a week playing video games. Here's something I'd recommend. Here's something like The Quarry, or here's something like, Immortals, where it's these are discrete play experiences that you can play them, replay them if you enjoyed them, but they're sort of a manageable chunk versus your Elden Rings and your Far Cries where they're requiring a good chunk of your life to kind of get through. But that's kind of coming back to it is, that's how you add value for clients, knowing what they're looking for and being attentive to it rather than just treating them as a customer where it's cool, if I sell you this thing has a higher margin than this other thing, and I want you to buy that. It's no, I want you to buy what, I want you to buy what works for you. And if nothing I have works for you, don't buy anything. If nothing grabs you, that's okay. It's, it's something where your recommendations need to be based on actually listening to your clients rather than what is best for you.
Yeah. And being the guide, right? Being the trusted advisor who can point the person to the best experience possible, whatever that happens to be.
Oh yeah, and it's part of it. There's a practice and a form to it of trying to figure out, okay, cool. Like let's interview someone. Let's ask the questions that get me to the details I need to know about them. So someone comes and says, well, I'm just getting into Magic. My buddies play. They told me it'd be super fun and it looks kind of cool. What do I need? I'll say, okay, well, like, have you played other card games before? Have you played like a Pokemon, a Yu-Gi-Oh? Okay, haven't played those. Starting brand new. Do you know what your buddies are playing? Well, I think they're playing like 100 card format. They have like really big decks. I'm like, okay, so they're probably playing Commander. Like, so what I'd recommend is, if I would say, so there's Magic has a free version of Magic called Magic Arena. I would recommend starting with that because there's a really good job of like tutorializing you how to play. You can play it on your phone. I'd recommend desktop because playing on your phone is a little tricky. But with, I would say like try that. If you like that, even if you like it, play it through a bit. It'll kind of walk you through all the basics, kind of like a video game. It'll also like step up your difficulty, introduce you to new mechanics in a timely way. Because when you first get into Magic, playing it can be a lot. There's you're basically talking about a game where we have agreed upon the rules we've made up in our heads that agree with the rules that someone else wrote, and that is something where that's a lot if you're not familiar with it and can feel as a new player. The digital side of it makes it a lot easier to take when you say, well, I clicked on the thing. Why can I do the thing? Oh, I can't do the thing versus your buddy says, well, you can't do that. Well, of course you tell me that I can't do that. That's advantageous to you because what I do is be super cool. And like your buddy just goes, mechanically, that's not how that works. But it's like it's easier when a computer tells you versus your friend. So when that client comes in, you say, hey, try this thing. If you like it, great. Here's what I recommend for a Commander Precon. You could build your own. But generally speaking, the Commander decks are built in a specific way to encourage exploration and tinkering with. So your buddies will tell you these decks are bad. They're not. They're designed in a specific way, and that a normal Magic deck is built around having a really good core strategy. That you've got a synergy or a plan in mind of what you're looking to do. And when it comes to sort of like how you implement that, you have a very directed approach to all the cards that you're doing feeds your strategy. And the Commander Precons and all the Magic Precons are built in such a way that they say, we're not going to prejudge what you think you'll be interested in. So here's this 3-color combination. It can do like 12 different things, and we're going to give you a little bit of each one. And the idea is that you play it and go, cool, every time I played this card, it was awesome and great. Every time I got this card, I'm like, damn it. Like, that's and part of it is that play them unmodified because that'll give you a feeling for what works and what doesn't and what you like, not what's good or bad, but, all right, neat. I like having big haymaker plays, or I like having like, really sneaky like finesse plays,
Yeah, find out if you're a Timmy, a Johnny, or Spike, or whatever part of the game attracts you. Figure that part out.
Yeah, and part of it is that you play it as it is, and after you've played like 5 or 6 games, you'll figure out what you do and don't like, and that's the part where you start getting the real heart of Magic, which is the customization. So usually when a new player comes in, that's the winning process you do. You sort of figure out, neat, what are you expressing to me that you're interested in? We figured that part out. How would you like to engage in that interest? Is it with the buddies already? Is it with you by yourself? How do you build it up there and make a recommendation based on sort of that? And sometimes the recommendation is, you don't need to buy anything. Like, try it, digitally, try it with your buddies before you commit. But if you're like, yep, I just want to get a deck today. Awesome, man. That's great. Here's what I'd recommend for you. Which one should I pick? Whatever one looks coolest to you is as good a place as any. If you have like a really strong feeling about like a color combination, we'll pick you something that's in that range. But otherwise, it's all non-judgmental because it's all equally good, especially if you're starting. That's part of that client experience, where it's like a lot of times when people come to game stores, that's kind of where they bounce off. They'll sort of come in, they'll sort of look at some stuff. Not someone will say, well, it's a Commander deck. Sometimes they're pretty bad. Like that's sometimes the reaction you get when you go to a game store. But it's something where you're looking to help that client out and figure out, what it is they're looking for. And if the answer is that, it's something that they don't end up being interested in, or it's something where, the answer is that they don't need to get anything today, that's okay. Or even if the answer is that you're like, okay, well, thanks for talking to me. I'm going to go order it on Amazon. All right. That's, it's one of those ones where like some people will take that personally, but I would also say that someone is, coming to you to ask questions. And if they're the kind of person who's going to do that and want to order the best possible option, again, that's a client choice. And all you can sort of do in those cases is just have the availability for it and say, okay, cool, we have the stuff. If you need it, if Amazon, like if someone steals it off your porch, like that sucks, but, or it shows up and it's a repacked box of, Masters or what have you, like, It's something where like you can come here and you'll get exactly what you want. You can leave with it today, and that's got to be one of your selling features of saying if it's more important for someone to leave, go and save $5 or $10 online on it, and wait, for it to be shown up. That's a client that you weren't winning over anyway to that sort of style. But they'll most likely be back because you weren't a jackass to them, right? It's like, okay, man, like we talked about it. I'm, if you, like we've had people go like, well, one part of the reason I was asking today is because I saw like a deal online for like one for like $50. Man, that's a great price. You should totally get that. Because the reality is, you can be, it's a choices thing, right? Like you can be upset and angry that someone like is, in your view, wasting their time. Or you can sort of see it as like, my time is already gone. If I'm sitting and ask this person, they'll never come back. Whereas like if I'm just like, fine about it, it's like,
you can also look at it in the long term.
Yeah.
You look at the big picture, right?
Yeah.
So that first interaction you have with somebody who says, that's great. Thanks for taking up give me 20 minutes of your time. Give me all your recommendations. I'm going to go buy from somebody else. That's great, right? Like that doesn't feel good necessarily, but that could also be seen as okay, well, maybe this person will never come back and, they just took advantage of me. That stinks. But there's a pretty good chance that they're going to buy that thing and then they're probably going to come back to you again to be like, well, you gave me a great, I love this thing. You gave me great advice. What else do you got? Oh, yeah. Well, I can't find that online. I can't get these. You can't buy Magic Singles on Amazon right now.
Oh, yeah. There's a value to sort of like having a relationship and an approach that says, we're here to provide a service and an experience, and someone will either appreciate that or they won't. And that's totally okay. I'm not here to bully anyone or shame them to shopping with me. That is not my approach, my style. My approach.
Buy my stuff.
my approach is very much, I tell my staff is that, I don't put any sales goals. I don't put any like criteria on them, because the answer is, if someone is happy, when your typical person, when your typical client comes in, they have a number in mind when they come shopping with you of what they're expecting to spend. Mm-hmm. Like, so if someone has showed up at our store, they are planning to spend, whatever they have planned in their mind to spend. And sometimes they will spend a little more than that.
Yeah.
But they typically go, well, I came in here, I have $100. It's my fun money. I'm looking to spend it. I'm going to find something to spend it on. And your job as a game store is to have something available for them because, support your LGS, support your local store only works insofar as that you have the product to facilitate that need. So like one of the reasons that we stock so deep and so heavy is that we carry 1+ of every Warhammer model in stock. We carry, every video game release, so much stuff, and part of it is that if someone wants to support their local game store, we've done part of that for them. It's, the challenge is like you'll hear shops say, support your LGS. And I've been to a lot of stores, and there are stores that I love supporting and love going to, but they don't have the product mix to make me, if I had $200, I've gone to stores where I'm like, I really loved it here. This is a really awesome place. I'd love to support you. It's something where I would love to spend $500 plus with you, and I'm struggling to find like $100 to spend.
I don't want to just pick up a bunch of random board games that I'm never going to play.
Yeah, and I've 100% gone to stores that I've absolutely loved and spent money there, where it's like I in no way, shape, or form needed this, but I wanted to feel like I spent something to support them. And part of that is just having the inventory available, having stuff thing. And I'm not talking about like high-end foils or things like that, like the stuff that's like an unreasonable ask to kind of have a store in play. But it's something where if you want your community to support you, you have to have the products that they actually want to have. And if you don't have that, it's very hard for them to sort of like, support you as a store. So like when we got into Warhammer, we had initially carried the bestsellers line for GW. Basically, it's a list of their products that say, okay, GW says that these products turn the most frequently. These are the most like, not necessarily the most like, not necessarily the best models, but things that sell the most of, like starter product. And we carried that, and we carried that for 6 months, I think maybe almost a year. And in that time, we had people come in, go, oh man, I was looking for this thing. It's like, oh, well, we don't have that, but I can order it in. It'll be here in like 2 or 3 days. Like, no, that's okay. I'm good. And enough of that happened where I realized that, if we wanted to make those clients happy, we had to have what they were looking for, because wait 2 or 3 days for it is not an appropriate answer for that client who wants it today. It's why they're coming to the store. They want it now. They don't want to come back in a few days. They don't want to deal with me saying, "Hey, the order got delayed by like a day or so. UPS ate my stuff." Like, that's it's like they don't want to hear it. What they're here for is to support you, but also to have the thing that you wanted when they wanted it. So with that sort of thing, we committed in saying, okay, well, if we're going to carry this, and what our clients are saying is that they want to have, they want to be able to walk in and walk out with it. We need to order and carry product in a way that makes sense for that. So we basically made a commitment to sort of like carry more stock of it. And it's got to the point now where like we have not only the stuff that they carry in like a traditional GW store, but also all the web exclusive items that, you can order as a retailer. Most stores don't, because it's a lot of products to sort of like carry that may or may not sell in a timely fashion, right? So if you're worried about like product turnover, carrying the whole web only range is a tough ask. But the benefit that we found for us in our position is that it's something where it means we have for something that is sort of like broadly generic as GW products like Box of Space Marines, we have unique items within that range. So there's things like, oh my gosh, there's a bunch of like the Trigon for like the Tyranids army is like a web only item. It's not an army, it's not a model that's seeing a whole lot of competitive play, but it's a really cool model that a lot of casual players looking for that no one really kind of stocks, because it's a big box model. It's $100. It's something where it's a lot of the usage case of it's a little weird, but someone who walked in, so we had someone come in yesterday who was like, oh my God, I've only ever seen this thing on the online store. And I've always sort of like hesitated about picking up because I don't really need it or have a use for it, but it's such a cool model.
And it's right there.
But it's right there, right? It's like, no, that's fair, man. Like, so it's like, but that's the kind of thing, like that's a customer, that's where you're adding value for your clients. And it's something where, knowing that that's part of their experience before they know it is a big part of what makes it successful.
Yeah. Yeah. Like it makes me think of opportunity cost.
Yep.
Right. Like you don't know what you're missing out on by not having something.
Oh, definitely. Right.
It'd be really interesting to get to do a A/B test, 2 timelines kind of scenario where you have, your approach where the deck box has massive selection, right? Like that, to me, that sounds like a big part of the USP, right?
Yep.
You could come into the deck box and say, I want these cards. You probably got them. You
Yep.
probably have everything that you need, right?
Yep.
And that's a value that not every store can offer, right? Not every store has the ability to or wants to.
It's definitely a high bar.
But if you compared that with, so you've got 99% coverage, right? Now I've had other stores on the podcast who that's their thing. They got 99% of every Magic card ever printed, right? And they try to keep it always in stock as much as they can. And that's the reason why customers come to them. But if it was, let's say, 80% or 60 or 50, or like, you just kind of did it at like that 20%, I only carry the standard stuff that's just been released in the last 3 months. Yeah. What would the difference in, customer satisfaction and like the sale volume and revenue, like how would that affect things? Is there a multiplier at 100% that just like makes it worth it that you've invested? Because that's a lot, right? That's a lot of inventory.
It's a fair bit. So I'd say in terms of how we view it is that it's one of those things that what you're selling as a game store outside of sort of like new release product, where that's kind of, for the most part, if your allocation is good, you can kind of have whatever you need for that. So if you say you want, $200 of a new set release, you can probably get that, assuming you've sort of like built up with your distributor that you that's a level that you go through. Whereas with, more vintage stuff, it's a little more tricky. So I would say that, in terms of there is a cost of carrying so much product, but part of that is, it does generate sales in the long term. But I think that's part of where you see like that slow build model where you don't start off with everything, but you start off with like kind of the greatest hits and sort of, build a client relationship. And when a client, because the biggest thing is that when you treat people like clients instead of customers, a client. And I know if I bring in this, reserve list dual land, I've got a guy for that. Mm-hmm. You as a seller bringing me something, you don't know the guy, but I know the guy, and I know, cool. I give you 50% in cash or 70% in trade for that thing that you've got. I know a client, I know a buyer, and it's not a guarantee, but I know if I reach out to that person, or if I make a social post where I throw it up, that person is going to message me or say, hey man, like, can you hold this? Like, and it's something where when you have that level of client knowledge, you can make those bigger plays. So basically saying, okay, seeing, it's not just have this thing, didn't have it, walked out, no kind of collective memory about what happened. It's a, oh, Todd was in looking for, Exalted 8-pound. Neat. I'll put a hold notification on it for when it's in. I'll do, we order regularly from GW, but I'll do a special direct order so that he just gets his stuff. So when he comes in, I'll I'll just message him and say, hey, this showed up for you, came back in stock, we got it for you. If you need it, awesome. If you already got somewhere else, no big deal. We'll fill a hole in the wall with it. But it's that sort of like qualified buying where you go, okay, I know this person wants this thing, and I know if I'm out of it, everyone else is probably out of it. So if I make the effort to go have the thing before a regular restock or regular thing comes in, now I just have it kind of, all available.
It's a reliable sale.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's not information or knowledge that you get without that relationship, right?
Exactly.
If it's all transactional. Yeah. You'll never know what they really want. You can kind of glean based off of what they purchased.
Because they may look at the wall of stuff and kind of browse a bit and go and just leave and go.
They'll never tell you.
Hey, never tell you. Whereas if you have a conversation, and go, hey man, what you looking for today? Anything excited? There's the conversational nature, and they say, yeah, man, I was looking for a Trigon, but you're out of stock of one. It's like, oh, if you I'll just grab your number, and when it comes in, we just give you a call. If you find in the meantime, no big deal. We're just going to restock it anyway. But you get first pass on her. And that's the kind of thing where if you don't engage with them as clients and you just treat it strictly as customers, you will never get that level of knowledge and you'll miss that sale. So, it's $100 sale that a little bit of conversation and a little bit of engagement, and a little bit of legwork gets you, right? It's something where there's a value to that. Whereas, and that's, you have to be able to back up that client relationship with having what they want. Because if you just don't have what they want, no amount of relationship in the world is going to change. They're going, cool, I really need this card for my deck. It's the thing that makes it work. I'd love to buy it from you. I'm willing to give you some time. I'm willing to give you some patience on it to get it kind of figured out. But I want this. And if you can't get it for me, I'm willing to delay, but I'm eventually going to get it from somebody.
Yeah.
So that's part of the element of, sort of saying, you want to have that inventory to support, the clients who want to shop with you, the clients who want to say, okay, I'd really like to buy this from you because I like you and I want to support you. You need to have that inventory to make that sale, because it doesn't make you any benefit if there's no ability to sort of, to have that sale materialize. Because otherwise you'll just go, okay, well, this guy's been waiting on me for 3 months to get this thing for him. I never get around to it, or I don't do whatever, and he's eventually going to buy it from somebody else. So by the time I get the thing back in, all he's going to remember when I call him is saying, oh yeah, I waited for 6 months for you to figure this out, and I just went and bought it, right? So that's a part of it, right? So what level do you stock to? I think the answer is that, I think you don't need as large of a blanket approach if you truly know your customer, know your client base, and don't just treat them as customers. Because if you're treating them as customers, you may not get that information, and no amount of stocking will sort of be cool, I have 90% of this stuff, but he wants that that thing, that thing that falls out of the 90% range of what somebody might want or care for. He falls outside of that. So I'm never going to satisfy that customer, even if I'm at 90 or 92%, if I don't have that unique thing they're looking for. And you don't know that unless you're treating it as a client experience rather than as a customer experience.
I want to go back to